Welcome to the Not the Andrew Marr Show. Here we are, Sunday morning. We've got our regular newspaper reviewer, John Dunn, out there in Brighouse. Are you there, John?
I am now. I've unmuted, Crispin. Yes.
Oh well, that's good to see you. So you're raring to go this morning?
Definitely, red meat for breakfast.
You had red meat for breakfast. Oh, great. And our other newspaper reviewer for today is Chris Peace. Are you there, Chris?
I'm Crispin. Good morning.
How are you?
I'm not so bad, actually.
Did you have red meat for breakfast?
I didn't have red meat for breakfast. I had poached eggs on toast.
Okay, well that's got lots of protein in it, so you'll be in a good position.
Sheffield eggs as well.
Yeah, well you got to plug the Sheffield eggs. So we're going to start off with our newspaper review, and the first story that I thought we could speak about was the UK races to deport asylum seekers ahead of Brexit. What's your what's the rush, do you think, here, Chris?
Well, basically, once we get over the line at the end of the year on Brexit, being able to use the powers that there currently is to do this, that's the Dublin Convention, we're not going to be able to do it. So it seems that Priti Patel is putting her blatant, her attitude in terms of trying to deport people into full gear. I think the rush is because things will be different next year once we have finished the transition period. It's pretty disgusting, really. I mean, this is what we've seen, in this Tory government from start to finish. We all saw the efforts that people went to try to protest and shout against what was happening with our people who were deported to Jamaica last week, and this is just further evidence of their agenda. Hostile environment through and through. It's disgusting.
And John, what do you think about Labour's response to these deportations, especially the ones to Jamaica last week?
I think, like everything, it's too lukewarm. The roof should come off of Parliament about this. People, I'd like to see the entire front bench trying to stop these planes and things like that. I mean, I can never get beyond those immigration mugs that Labour produced for 2015 general election. And, this is a scandalous attack upon some really vulnerable people, many of whom have fled the wars that New Labour inflicted on their countries. Many of people who've been trafficked, raped, horrific things, and now they're being sent back to God knows what. And, it's not just about compassion on this, it's about real anger. And, and I wish Labour would take the argument up really, not just say immigrants, benefit the country, because that sounds as if they've got some monetary value, but that these people are a valued part of our society and are welcome and have helped build this country. And also the ones that come in could be offering, the university teachers, I've worked with asylum seekers, people who were orchestra leaders and mathematics professors. These people could be doing something. Yeah,
and we've seen that there's something I did notice in the papers this weekend is that cuts are coming thick and fast. The government's sort of non-austerity idea that there's no austerity. It's certainly not the case now. If we look at some of these stories, Chris, I mean, it says here in the Sunday Mirror, disabled to lose 2 billion in Tory benefit freeze. We've got a story here as well that £1 billion of rail cuts will be taken from the budget in the next budget, and we've got this story here about funding gap of 643 million puts special needs teaching at risk. So it certainly looks like the Tories are going back to their austerity Tory agenda. What do you think about Labour's response to this?
I wish you know, this is the sort of thing that we should be so loud on and angry about. That it still feels like there's a little bit of careful handling going off. I mean, it's beyond belief if we cannot actually be standing up for people affected, you know, particularly by cuts to disabled benefits. You know, they call it a freeze. Let's clear it's cuts that are happening. Freeze is just a way of trying to dress it up and to play on people to feel sympathetic to the government, thinking, oh, it's a tough time. The whole narrative that kind of like encompasses the Tories' approach and the whole narrative around the economy is wrong. This idea that we haven't got money going spare at the moment is completely not true. It's all about how you choose to invest what you spend. The government do not choose to invest in people, especially the people that are most vulnerable. They want people to bear it on their backs. What is happening? Of course, we are spending an amount of money that nobody predicted, but look how much money has been gifted and wasted away by the Tories. And then, you know, they then turn around and say, you know, somehow we've got to pay for this. We're not talking about household debt. We're talking about national debt. We are talking about borrowing at a time when interest rates to borrow have never been lower. When we talk about what you want from a socialist government, we know that that involved borrowing. But it would have been investing in people, investing in infrastructure, investing in jobs. To turn around and start the narrative going where we're suggesting that we have to pay, and in order to do that, they're going to strip away support from people who need it. It's just Tories through and through. Why are we surprised? The only thing that I am, you know, well, again, not particularly surprised, but certainly not happy about, damn angry about really, is that, you know, our Labour front bench should be shouting about this. They should be holding the government to account. They should be giving the correct economic narrative and correcting the Tories' view of it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean to give them some credit, the disabled cuts story, that there is a quote from Marcia de Cordova. It's time the government ended this discrimination. However, I do remember Labour speaking against austerity in the Ed Miliband leadership time, but not really, you know, kind of wanting to play it kind of halfway, would be a bit tough, but we're not going to actually do too much to look like we're helping out people who are, you know, it just doesn't sound quite tough enough. John, are you I get the feeling that the government is going to help people who are middle earners who are struggling, but they don't really care about the poor. Is that what's happening here as well?
Well, I think it goes back to Priti Patel's 8 million economically inactive. That, you know, these people think that if you don't contribute to their riches, not the economy, their riches, that you are not productive. And I mean, I know many disabled people, ex-miners and that, who struggle. I mean, we've got to accept and remember that this is on top of years and years of austerity. since the Tories were elected under David Cameron. And I think, you know, yeah, Chris is right. The Labour front bench should be screaming loud and clear and setting a lead on this. But I also think we've got to say to leaders of Labour councils, yes, Labour councils, to paraphrase Neil Kinnock when you say that name, that they should refuse to pass these cuts on and set needs budgets. And whatever the consequences are, if enough Labour councillors had some backbone and stood up, we could start a real fight back against this. You know, and when the Tories aren't just taking money off our people, off the most vulnerable, off special needs children, off the disabled, they're actually throwing it to their friends. You know, we've seen the scandal of people setting up £100 companies and being given millions to not produce protective equipment for frontline workers. Again, and you know, Philip Green, his company is just about to collapse and throw people to the wolves, and he's living on £100 million yacht in Monaco. Now, there's got to be something wrong with a system like that, and we've got to start not just fighting individual items like cuts and that. We've got to start fighting for a totally different system.
Right. Okay. I'm just aware we've kind of not got much time, so I thought I'd bring in this story in the Observer, which is concern grows over Starmer's policy on Brexit deal. It looks like Neil Kinnock, the former leader of the party, has come in and he's determined that Labour doesn't back the Brexit deal. And also Manuel Cortes, who might be on this call, is opposed to it. What we had a show this week about this, and it seems that most Labour members would prefer abstaining or voting against it. What's your take on it, Chris?
Well, this is everything coming home to roost, I'm afraid. You know, we can't, you know, what is happening next week, and it's, you know, we're getting close to a year now, aren't we, since the general election. And I know well, and John knows well, because he was doing a pounding the streets of North East Derbyshire, which was one of our ex-solid Labour areas. You know, what we were getting was the Brexit issue. They were a Leave area. They weren't happy with the position that we'd landed in. And it's, you know, things do come home. And I mean, what the answer is on this is beyond making a decision on a vote. You know, we have had, you know, no influence and allowed no influence over what a Labour influenced Brexit deal could have been. There's no time left to debate anything. And we are left with, you know, pretty much the same position when we're going to have a number of people who are fed up with Labour's position over, you know, the fact that we, you know, leave without a deal, fed up if Labour support a deal, because there's still people who are saying we need to remain. You know, the reality of the situation is you cannot get away from the legacy of what the Brexit position was when we went into the last general election. 2017, we went into a general election where we put the country and the people first whilst respecting the referendum. We didn't hemorrhage Labour votes like we did in 2019 with a different position over back in a second referendum.
Right.
It's still going to divide people, it's still going to upset people, and basically we have engineered this position ourselves, I'm sorry to say.
And I'll leave the last word to you, John. I think we'll move on after this. You spoke about this a bit last week. Does Neil Kinnock coming into the argument, does that persuade you in any way, John?
Look, it's Sunday. I always try not to swear before 11 o'clock on a Sunday. I noticed in it that said Neil Kinnock had sent a private letter around. That's a bit different to how he usually is when he's on the media and shouting his position loud and clear. And Chris is right. You know, this is a mess of Labour's own making, and it's only going to make Labour, which is already toxic in many former industrial areas, it's only going to make it worse. You know, they're damned if they do now, damned if they don't. And the real tragedy for me is that it could have been oh so different. We could have put socialism on the agenda. We could be talking about transforming society. And now we're still in this mess 4 years after a cut and dried referendum result that we should have accepted. We're still arguing and going around in circles over which form, as I've said before, neoliberalism we prefer. And, you know, it would be nice to be smug about Starmer and his company getting us in this mess, but unfortunately it's going to be tragic again for our people.
Right, yeah. All right, well, thank you both for coming on. Great to see you again, John, and good to see you, Chris. I'm going to move on to what the topic of this show is really that there was a letter that was sent by, I think it's 8 affiliated unions to Keir Starmer, I think, asking that the whip be restored to Jeremy Corbyn. That's a lot of people represented by those unions, and the fact that many Labour members are not able to speak about this at all, maybe our best hope is the unions having an influence on this. And I thought I'd start by talking to Howard, who I spoke to a bit before the show, who seems to, I might be getting all this wrong about letters and who it was sent to, so I don't really want to say the wrong thing. What was the letter that was sent, Howard, and who was it sent to, and have you had a response?
Well, no, and it's the second letter, Crispin. It is an open letter. It is an appeal in respect of sort this out, that Jeremy Corbyn should not have been suspended in the first place and needs the whip returned. And as you would expect, it's signed by the General Secretaries of the 7 major unions. I see that Matt is on the call, and solidarity to Matt, who's a signature in respect of it. And it's also signed by community. So it's a real statement of intent, Crispin, as to the fact that the left trade unions are together in respect of this, and they'll stand side by side with the left membership and refuse to let it go. And
do you think that the unions could play a key role in this, as members have been sort of silenced on showing solidarity with Jeremy?
Well, yes, absolutely. Anybody who understands trade unionism will know that none of us are going to be silenced. Matt Rack will not be silenced. Manuel will not be silenced. Glenn McCloskey will not be silenced. This is the truth. David Ward will not be silenced. And we will take up the fight because we have a responsibility to. And I'll start in respect of this by offering my solidarity to Naomi and Louise, who are on this call, two outstanding comrades of ours. And you know, people can talk in whatever language they like in respect of what's going on here, but I'll say very clearly, Crispin, that those who are being suspended seem to have a commonality of being socialists who are determined to try and work for working class people and change society. And I know Naomi personally, and she is just an outstanding individual. And I'm telling David Evans right now, and Keir Starmer, it is an absolute stretch whenever you go after people like Naomi and Louise, and the membership will not stand by idly and put up with it. Crispin, there are plans afoot. We are in discussions, as Matt knows, we're in discussions about the 7 left unions coming together before Christmas, declaring our principles of solidarity, declaring our solidarity for the membership, standing by the principles of the 2017 manifesto, and importantly, standing by the historic link that there is between the trade union movement and the Labour Party. And the paper review that we just heard from John and Chris just hits it right on the head in respect of why this is so important. Public sector workers about to be pitched against private sector workers, immigrants about to be blamed, asylum seekers about to be exited from our country, the scandal of Windrush, and now we are becoming widely known as the party of abstention, where we forget any idea of principle. Well, the trade unions will not stand idly by, Crispin, and the reason why is because this is a party of ours and a party of the membership, and we aren't going away. And if I say as well, solidarity to everybody who's out there who's in dispute. And Crispin, I did jot down some of the disputes before coming on this morning, just so as people can understand the fight that is in the trade unions. There is a dispute currently at Heathrow. There is a dispute currently at Sainsbury's, a dispute at Airbus, a dispute at Croda, a dispute at Optar in Leeds, where Unite took the government to court to protect the right to picket during the COVID crisis. There's a dispute at Rolls-Royce at the moment in the Northwest, where we are fighting to protect aerospace in that part of the country, where you can see aerospace going down in the same way as the mines went down, unless there is somebody who will stand up for working people. SPS Technologies, Serco, there is a dispute in Davenport. We have a dispute at Barrow Medical in Chorley and South Ribble. Disgracefully, those who've been involved in creation of a COVID vaccine being asked to lose £7,000 a year in wages. There's a dispute at Newry and Mourne Council, where we are fighting back in respect of all Unite members across the council, saying no to the public sector freeze. There's a dispute at the moment in Heartlands Hospital in the Midlands, which is a unison dispute for porters, who are again being asked to lose terms and conditions because of a change in rotas. And every time you will see the trade union movement step up, Crispin. So we will fight for what's right for our members and fight for what's right for the working class of our nations. But the challenge now is whether or not the Labour leadership wants to stop this factionalism and turn his efforts to fighting for working class people, not eventually put out a tweet in solidarity for Rolls-Royce weeks after a dispute has started, but you actually feel it. Actually feel what working class people feel. But Crispin, and I'll finish with this, Crispin, unless you've got other questions for me, because I know that you've got general secretaries on this call and I know how important their contributions are. But I personally refuse to be downhearted right now. I absolutely refuse to be. And I was reflecting on why. And it is because we have constantly been through struggle. If I think back to Falkirk, where Unite stood against the Labour leadership, who reported us to the police for seeking to bring members into our party, to the police. Well, we stood firm and we fought that fight on behalf of Unite members and on behalf of our movement and on behalf of members generally in the Labour Party, the right to have their voice heard. In Falkirk, of all places, where the right wing of our party had destroyed the idea of us representing working class people. And then fast forward to Jeremy on the second ballot paper, where again we stood by Jeremy and said he will be on the second ballot paper, and the members overwhelmingly voted him in. We stood by him whenever we had the chicken coup. We stood by him going into the 2017 election. And this is the reason as to why I refuse to be downhearted. Because the 2017 election was a moment in time where we touched the door of number 10 Downing Street and we would have walked through it had it not been for factionalism in the Labour Party and had it not been for right-wing staff working against a socialist government. Well, there is power in the unions, Crispin. There is power in the unions and our membership knows it. And we will not back down. We will show our membership the power they have, and we will stand up to this leadership on behalf of all members of the Labour Party.
Well, that's very powerful. Thank you very much, Howard, for coming on. And I'm going to invite Matt Rack to come in. Are you there, Matt?
Hi. Good morning, Crispin. Good morning, comrades. Hello, everyone.
So Matt, you just Howard was saying, you know, you've had this letter, and what hope, do you think there's a good hope that the unions will have enough power to persuade Keir Starmer? And what do you think would happen if Jeremy isn't brought back in?
I don't know whether they will take notice of the unions. I really hope that they will. I mean, it's not exactly everyone's position. I presume, I suspect both myself and Howard would have gone further in that letter, but we tried to achieve a consensus in writing that letter, because my union is absolutely clear, as Howard's is, that we opposed Jeremy Corbyn's suspension from the party, and we opposed the removal of the whip, and we passed a resolution just last week or the week before, making that very clear. That's the position of the Fire Brigades Union through our structures, and we will continue to send our solidarity to Jeremy. I just want to echo the points that have been made by others. Those other comrades who have been suspended, Louise and Naomi were on the call. I know Naomi well and have huge respect for her. And these are outrageous attacks on free speech and debate. I have to say, the idea that you can't even debate reports, I've said this to Keir Starmer himself, the whole history of politics and law is about debating decisions and discussing things and identifying the way forward. This attempt to shut down free speech is frankly ridiculous. Whether they listen, I don't know. If they don't listen, I think we're in for an even worse period of internal civil war, and I don't think that's what is necessary. If you look at the impact of the pandemic, we've lived through one of the worst years in the life of all of us, with the huge deaths on an international scale, and now the economic impact of that pandemic in terms of jobs, wages, living standards, public services. And we should be a united Labour Party and Labour movement defending working people, and instead we are focusing on an internal row. It's absolutely disgraceful, and it's a failure to the people we're supposed to be representing. And I just wanted to say something about this abstention. I see that in the chat there's quite a bit of comment. I mean, I am staggered about the level of abstentions we've got from the Labour leadership on some things that I think motivate many of us to be in the Labour movement in the first place. Many of us have campaigned about blacklisting, about the spy cops, and the idea that Labour would then whip its MPs to vote against a bill on these very issues is utterly disgraceful, and solidarity with those Labour MPs who refused to comply with that and have stood up for principles. And I think what we are forgetting is that actually we live in a very sharply class divided society. The Tories represent the billionaire class, and we are supposed to represent the majority. And there is a fundamental difference of interest between those two groups, between those who are the billionaire class who run this society and the rest of us. And Labour should be standing up. And to me, the starting point of political, what you do in Parliament is assessing that. And generally, opposition means you oppose them. That's what we're there for. We're there to oppose them. The idea that we consider supporting them or that we endlessly abstain, there may be occasions where tactically it is wise to abstain, but I think the starting point should be opposition. So I think what the unions can do, I think the unions have a wider audience. We join the Labour Party as individuals, and the danger is we all end up talking to ourselves unless we're out on the doorstep sufficiently. I think one thing we have to speak to members who don't agree with us on politics, and I think that's a useful perspective that we can bring into this debate. By the way, that doesn't mean backing down on principles. It means having a dialogue and a discussion with members about how we go forward. I really hope that the Labour leadership wakes up to how serious this crisis is. I think it's fantastic that we got that letter through, and it is a warning that the unions do not want to see a civil war in the Labour Party, but that means there needs to be some concessions on the other side.
Well, thank you, Matt. And I'm going to move to Andrew Hudd, who has come on kindly from ASLEF. Are you there, Andrew?
Yeah, Crispin, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. So what you've heard from Howard and Matt, I mean, it seems to me that the unions have a really strong voice and could possibly influence the leadership, because they can't really do without the unions, can they?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, historically, I mean, when you view the relationship between the trade unions and Labour, you know, I've always seen it as that, you know, that connection with the working class and the communities, and actually, you know, affecting policy and the decisions of the PLP. But I think that gap has gone bigger, and I think, you know, even if you look at recent history, that those on the right of the party and even those sadly on the left have asked for, you know, less trade union influence. But historically, they've been like the steady hand on the tiller, if you like. And whether we can change you know, the current projection of Labour and the way it's going policy-wise and direction-wise, I'm not entirely sure, because I don't think they want to hear it, and I don't. We're kind of the nasty smell in the room. But you know, I echo the sentiments of the previous speakers. We have right now a crisis of politics within the Labour and trade union movement. We have disputes around the country. We have balloted on London Underground and on TransPennine over issues there, you know, where Boris is looking at trying to introduce driverless trains in exchange for the new budget to keep the London Underground surviving. And we have no voice. There's no voice. There's no pushback from the Labour Party. Only abstentions. And this is like the crisis where we're going. And I think, you know, as a whole movement, I think we've got to reconnect with the communities that we have left behind, and I mean that in the most sincere way, with trade unions as well, going back to community-based activism, going back into the workplaces and factories and the Uber workplaces of the world and the Amazons, and recruiting and active, you know, getting active and recruiting, and with that, what you do with that trade union link then with the Labour Party is bring that reality back to what is a PLP that I don't think has any connection with reality at all. And you know, previous speakers mentioned Brexit. You know, Crispin, you know, they'll probably abstain. You know, there'll be another abstention there when actually we should be giving answers to working people. You know, the whole, we lost hundreds of thousands of workers through the Brexit debate because of we didn't have that accurate policy, a deliberate policy. We didn't understand the frustrations of communities that have been left behind by deindustrialization. And we said that we wanted a second referendum. And I've heard, you know, even within the trade union movement, high level members, let's say that, you know, assessing those who supported Brexit in the working class communities where I live and elsewhere, that their views were racist, xenophobic, and the rest of it. And that hasn't played. But the crisis is not only with trade unions, and it's also with the Labour Party. And I think to get back to, you know, those roots is going to take an awful lot of work. We've got anti-trade union legislation in front of us. We've got the deindustrialisation. And the only people, it seems, shouting loudly enough for reindustrialisation and 11 and up are the Tories at the moment. You know, we should be, this is a missed opportunity. The Labour Party pretty much now has a clean canvas. We have, as a movement, a clean canvas, because what COVID has done has highlighted the inequalities in our society. You know, the lack of work, the lack of decent work, the lack of decent pay. We have children, we have to feed children going to school to get their education because they're starving. And it's highlighted all those inequalities, the lack of investment in the NHS, the lack of care for our elderly. It's ripped down those structures and highlighted them, and the Tories are plowing money in it to try and cover it up. But the role of the Labour Party to highlight those inequalities and highlight those deficits in society has been missed, because we're not giving a socialist answer to those problems. We're giving an abstention. And I think the treatment of Jeremy Corbyn, by the way, you know, a thoroughly decent man throughout the start, you know, and ASLEF were very keen and loyal supporters of Jeremy Corbyn, because we not only seen the decent man, but we've seen the politics behind the man. How that got fuddled later on is a different debate for a different time. But we supported him all the way through, and we supported his time on the ballot paper. We talked against the coups, and what has happened now with his suspension and the removal of the whip is an abuse of power and goes against every Labour principle I've ever known. And if it was one of our members, you know, we'd be, you know, imagine that was a discipline of our members. You know, if that was any trade union member in any workplace, we'd be going to war with the management over this. And to be fair, you know, balloting, you know, this is grossly unfair. And I'd like to just echo on the end of it, because I'm ranting a bit. But Matt put it right, you know, is look, we have a movement as well, and we're all kind of guilty of it, you know, and maybe it's a bit to do with other things that are going on, but we have been guilty of shutting down debate. And, you know, if Jeremy Corbyn says that the, you know, he recognised that there was anti-Semitism, but that it was used for political reasons, it was blown out of proportion for political reasons. Of course, I'm paraphrasing, I forget the real words, apologies. But, you know, if that's a point of view, it's like Keir Starmer's said, oh, I'm offended, and shut down debate. There's no debate over that. There's no discussion around what that means and what that looks like. And if we lose that freedom of debate within the party, then we just well give it all up and go home.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you for coming on the show, and it's good to hear from you. It sounds to me like there's a division between the parliamentary party and the unions and the members. So it's quite a bad situation. Thank you, Andrew. Manuel Cortez has come on.
Hello, how you doing?
Hi.
Hello, good morning. How you doing, Crispin?
I'm good.
Long time I haven't seen you, mate. Hope you're keeping well.
Yeah, last time I saw you
in these difficult times.
I was in Doncaster with you last time, and we were doing a JC for PM show.
Yeah, no, that was a very good fundraiser, wasn't it?
So now it looks like it's JC for MP. It's become JC for MP rather than JC for PM. What do you think about what's happening with Jeremy Corbyn and his not having the whip?
Well, our union is very clear about this, that the whip should be restored, and it should be restored without delay. Because all we are doing at the moment is fighting each other when we need to concentrate our anger and our fighting spirit against the Tories. We're in a terrible situation in the middle of a health emergency. We have a deepening economic crisis, and the Labour Party is fighting itself. This is just utter nonsense. And the sooner we move on from this, the better it will be. I think the theme of today is, what is the role of trade unions within the Labour Party? Or can the trade unions save the Labour Party? Well, I think historically we always have saved the Labour Party. When the traitors went on to form the SDP, it was the unions that kept the Labour Party going and the show going. And I think that we will continue to play that role. But at the moment, it actually doesn't really matter who's right or who's wrong. Germany just needs to get the whip back. The Labour Party needs to reunite, and we need to take on the Tories. That's the most important thing that we should be doing at this point in time, because millions of our people are going to be very badly hurt with this economic crisis. We've already got millions of people who were left behind from prior economic crisis and deindustrialization. And the last thing we can afford to do is have the Labour Party to be talking to each other rather than reaching out. I think Matt made that point earlier about needing to reach out and talk to people. We need to be engaging with people to ensure two things. A, that we stop the nasty Tories in the tracks, and B, that we get a Labour government, and one that is transformative, that changes this country for the better going forward.
Are you optimistic that Keir Starmer and the General Secretary will see sense on this?
Well, you know, if I wasn't an optimist, I wouldn't be a socialist, because trying to change the world is a huge task. Yes, I'm always optimistic. We just need to keep pushing. I just cannot see how this is doing Keir Starmer any good anyway. And I say that as a union who balloted our members on who we should nominate for the leader. Keir Starmer came overwhelmingly on top of that ballot. I say that as a union that put his name on the ballot paper. We were one of the people who supported him. But this cannot be benefiting Keir Starmer. Look, it's an old adage, but it's true. Divided parties don't win elections. We've got a whole host of important elections coming up next year. We've got a huge platform to use those elections to campaign against austerity, to ensure that we have a post-COVID settlement that leaves no one's behind. That is what we should be doing, looking out, getting a socialist message across rather than fighting each other.
Right. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Manuel.
You're welcome, mate.
And I'm going to move on to Ian Hodson of the Bakers. Are you there? Are you there, Ian?
I am. Morning, Crispin.
Morning, Ian. So we've had quite a few affiliated unions speaking that this isn't the right way to do things for not having the whip for Germany, and also that the unions feel a bit marginalised in this with this Labour Party at the moment. Is that your feeling as well?
It absolutely is. I mean, first off, I want to send obviously our solidarity to Naomi and to Louise too. I mean, in fact, everybody in JVL. I mean, we shouldn't be demonising Jewish people because they're socialists, should we? I mean, all Jews should be welcome into the party. I mean, I think what's happening inside the Labour Party. Actually, I mean, before he was elected, I think me and Matt was making a statement in the Morning Star about David Evans and the approach that he had when he was part of the New Labour and marginalising the trade unions. Unfortunately, I don't think that what the unions did then was enough because we were so excited about having a Labour government that we allowed the party to be captured by those on the right. But I think this time we recognise that we can't allow that to happen again. We need a change in our society. We need to come together as a Labour movement because the working class people of this country deserve a voice. And I think the trade unions must come together and must make sure that that happens, because for too many years, whether it's been getting rid of our council housing, making people work on 0 hours contracts because of the job insecurity crisis we have in this country, we haven't had our voices heard. And what that's done is allowed the far right to come in and make out that it's the representative of the working class in our community. It's created an opportunity, for right-wing views to become normalised in our society. I mean, instead of condemning those Millwall fans as they should have been yesterday, you've got a minister on TV saying that they have a right to be heard. Well, actually, no, they don't have a right to be heard. Their views were racist, and that's what it was all about. So I think we have to make sure that this time the Labour Party listens to the trade union voice, and it's up to the trade unions to make sure that voice is heard loud and clear.
And because lots of Labour members are leaving because they feel silenced about this and they can't express solidarity with Jeremy Corbyn and also other members. Apparently, actually, you can't express that you want to get the vote of no confidence in the General Secretary. That's been ruled out of order by some regional offices. If things don't work out with this appeal for Jeremy's whip to be restored, are the unions able to provide a place where socialists in the Labour Party can kind of start the big movement up from there? Can we have a movement started from the unions and coming into Labour rather than from Labour coming into the unions? I mean, is that a possibility?
Well, the Labour Party without the trade unions is the Liberal Party, Crispin. I mean, but it's not just the issue about not being able to debate whether or not the issue is about no confidence in Keir Starmer or Jeremy Corbyn. I got a message this morning from people explaining that 2 constituencies, right, have been banned, which is Bethnal Green and Poplar and Limehouse, because they wanted to put a motion forward in support of the Big Ride for Palestine, which is a charity event to raise funds for children in Palestine. And that has been banned by David Evans, the General Secretary. I mean, so it's understandable people are getting frustrated and feeling that they have no option but to leave. But I would encourage them at this moment in time to join the trade unions and to fight inside those trade unions to make sure that those trade unions are socialist trade unions that are fighting for a working class political voice. And I think what's important is the trade unions' voice must be heard. And I think the trade unions have to enforce that message. Because like I say, without the trade union movement inside the Labour Party to become the Liberal Party, and then we have a right to have a voice because we deserve a voice, and every working class community deserves to be represented by MPs that have our values and that will fight for our issues and will go to Parliament and represent our interests.
Well, thank you, Ian. Now, I think what we've spoken about here with the trade unions is that there's definitely a need for the Labour Party's parliamentary party to start listening to the unions, because that this is they're the lifeblood of the party. And if 8 unions are saying that Jeremy Corbyn should have the whip restored, I don't see why he shouldn't have it back. I'm going to move on to a union official who's just been suspended by the Labour Party a week ago. Louise Regan, are you there?
I am.
You've been on quite a number of these shows. We've done talks about lockdown and about education, and I've always listened to everything you've said, and you've been very great to speak to on these Zooms, I must say. And I am so shocked that you've been suspended by the Labour Party. How long have you been a member?
Well, on and off, I have been a member since I was in my early 20s.
And you've never had any cause for suspension or anything before this?
No.
And what do you think about the issue of free speech, that CLPs are being stopped from discussing? I mean, apparently, like I say, people can't do a vote of no confidence in the General Secretary. People have been stopped from even discussing freedom of speech. There was one regional office that stopped a motion about how we should have freedom of speech. Is this gone too far?
Well, I think so. I think we've heard from some fantastic trade unionists already. I've been a member of a trade union my whole sort of adult working life. And you know, trade unionism is at the core of everything we do. As trade unionists, we recognise the right and the need for there to be open, polite, comradely discussion about issues. That's the only way that we will change our society, is by discussing, being respectful, listening to other people's views, but ultimately by talking about those issues that are important to us. And I have always held at my core the right to freedom of speech. And that is what I have always done in everything that I have chaired. And I would do that again now, and I will never stop doing that, because I don't think we can have a just and fair society without that.
And how has it felt for you personally? Because I mean, it must be, has it been a really tough time for you since this happened?
It has been quite shocking, I think it would be fair to say, particularly in terms of, I mean, I found out via social media. Somebody messaged me because my case had been shared on social media before I had been informed by the press. So, I mean, that was quite shocking in and of itself, really. But I think what I would say, and there are there are lots of people out there that I can see, that I know, the level of solidarity and support that I have received has been second to none. I can't, you know, so knowing that so many people believe that it's the right thing to do, and that it's the, you know, that we should be fighting, makes it so much easier. I have so much support every single day. I get support. I get messages telling me, you know, thanking me for what I've done, and recognizing the importance of what people are doing in terms of speaking out and standing up for what we think is correct.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's just, I mean, to think Jeremy Corbyn's not got the whip back is just, for me, as such a decent man to have to face that, and then to hear what your situation as well, it just seems like maybe only the cool people get suspended. But I'm going to move on to another person who's been suspended. Thank you very much, Louise, for coming on. I'm going to move on to Naomi. Are you there, Naomi?
Yes, I am here. Hello.
So,
great to be here.
How have you been? Have you been receiving lots of messages of that word that we can't use?
Well, people have been so kind, just so many messages saying, how are you all right? And I can only reply, I am reveling in the notoriety. It's just, when you get Roger Waters tweeting solidarity, it's really a bit mad. But can I just explain a bit about what happened? This is Chingford and Woodford Green, where again, the information about our situation was leaked. So it's not just me, it's the chair of our constituency, Gary Leffley, who was also suspended. And, you know, obviously I'm not allowed to talk about what's in the letter of suspension because Labour claim that that's confidential, but there's plenty of other things that Louise and I and others can talk about. So it was basically, confidentiality was completely flouted. We had a general meeting. We were not even discussing one of the banned motions. A branch had put forward a motion in solidarity with Jeremy calling for the whip to be restored, but we've been very cautious and said, oh no, you know, we don't want to get our CLP put in special measures or something. We won't put that motion. So there was no motion. Put that straight. What there was an impassioned speech from Gary Leffley, our chair, in his opening remarks, which looked in some detail at how on earth the party has got to a situation like this, where people dare not put perfectly legitimate motions. And later on, there was a discussion in which I spoke. And the next morning, comrades, we get an email from a certain journalist I will not name, he's known to many of you, at the Jewish Chronicle, saying, oh, I hear that you said XYZ and Gary Leffley said ABC. What do you have to say about that then? And before we knew it, article in the Jewish Chronicle about us. So that was before we were suspended. Then this journalist was able to tweet the following day, so we're now on Wednesday, that we've been suspended. Unfortunately, we were pre-warned because we knew about the leak, thanks to the journalist emailing us. So we got our own story out. So you can see Gary's speech and my speech on the JVL website. And you can see that what we said was legitimate, you know, legitimate discourse. Anyway, so there we are. I mean, we obviously can't accept these attempts at silencing. You know, there's a confidentiality requirement that's constantly flouted by the other side. Thank goodness we've now got 75 CLPs who are resisting. If you look at the latest on stats for lefties, someone helpfully put it in the chat earlier. But look, this is not about me and Louise or the other unfortunate suspended people here. It's not even about Jeremy. This is about defending freedom of expression in our party and in the wider society. Yeah. So for JVL, for Don't Leave Organised, for all of us, it's got to be about building a strong, vibrant party that's outward looking and taking on the Tories at every turn. There've been some brilliant contributions about this today, haven't there? Not an inward looking party that outlaws debate and discussion. I mean, it's absolutely horrendous. So if you want to combat racist ideas or unacceptable ideas, including anti-Semitism, the best way is the fresh air of openness and discussion, isn't it? Free discussion, and the fact that they are manipulating Jewish fears and concerns to suggest that certain subjects that touch on, did everybody notice that phrase? It's appalling. Touch on anything to do with Jeremy, the EHRC, all those things we're not allowed to talk about, that Jewish people were unable to accept these subjects for discussion, that they might be upset. And we had people in the chat in our meeting, the ones who leaked, saying, oh, I'm uncomfortable. I don't think he ought to be saying that. None of them put their hands up to contribute to the discussion. There'll be a statement by members of the CLP later. And that thing about, yeah. So we've got to stand up for freedom and justice. And there is somebody else put in the chat, Labour activists for justice, with Feynman solicitors pursuing cases, probably going to go to court quite soon, because so far Labour have not responded to the pre-action letters and the concerns that these activists are putting forward. So support that. If you can bung that out for everybody, Labour activists for justice, Crispin, that would be excellent. So solidarity to everybody who's suspended, solidarity with Jeremy, but we've got a movement to build and we've got to resist this. You know.
Yeah, I think solidarity is a great word. It wasn't, I used to hear people like John McDonnell and maybe Ian Hodgson as well. I used to hear him say solidarity and a lot. I thought, oh, solidarity again. But then now that it's been banned, I mean, I'm well hot on solidarity. This is where it's at. I mean, if we can actually all say solidarity and build our solidarity, then I think we'll all get through this. I think it is all about that. If we know, I mean, you don't look too bad considering what's been going on. I mean, it must be the love and the solidarity that's keeping us all going. So thank you very much for coming on, Naomi, and thank you, Louise, again. And now we will be speaking to Rob in Hove.
Hello.
How are you doing?
You're right. All right. Yeah. What a superbly surreal stream of consciousness comedy section that was today.
Well, yeah, it was worth it, wasn't it? And you've written a song based on a summer hit you did. You did a summer
Indeed.
hit.
Yeah.
You turned it into a Christmas hit.
I repurposed it into a Christmas single. Yeah, just seemed, was it Mark said, it was Mark's comment about shut up and just go shopping. And then I thought that basically summed up how we're being treated this Christmas, isn't it? Like, shut up about shut up about people dying, shut up about Brexit, just go shopping, enjoy yourself, because Boris is going to save Christmas, and that's all that matters. We'll all be home by Christmas, just like in 1914.
So we've got this new version, "Shut Up and Just Go Christmas Shopping," and I've been sent a video version of it from Alison. So I might just see.
I've got Alison do Alison and Angus did the visuals.
Alison, can you speak about your video?
Oh yeah, well, Angus did all the design actually. I just put the video together. So Angus is our graphic designer. He did all the clever stuff.
And you were up till 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this is your
enjoy.
Well, it sounds nice to me with an acoustic guitar, because it's got our friend Faye Simon singing on it and stuff like that.
It's a very catchy song.
Hallelujah! St. Bodger has saved Christmas, just like he said he would. Now we all live in Pantoland, babes in the wood. If you're Cinderella, he'll sit you on his knee. Just do some retail therapy, you'll be fine, fine, fine. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. You'll be fine. Ho, 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 ho. St. Bodger has saved Christmas when Christmas morning comes. Just like Father Christmas, he'll give millions to his chums. If he don't come down your chimney with his pants on fire, just do some retail therapy, you'll be fine, fine, fine. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. You'll be fine. It's just the flu. Ho, 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 ho. St. Bodger has saved Christmas. Oh, hear those church bells ring. And next he'll save hard Brexit. Oh, hear those turkeys sing. He just said those magic words. Get COVID done. Do some retail therapy, you'll be fine, fine, fine. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. You'll be fine. Ho, 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 ho. Bless his number 10 of virgins, there's a lack. He couldn't find 3 wise men, just Hancock and Sunak. But he's given all the homeless an extra Union Jack. Do some retail therapy, you'll be fine, fine, fine. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. You'll be fine. Ho, 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 ho. So let us worship Bodger. And look, it started snowing. And little baby refugees like Jesus best get going. And as for work-shy Tiny Tim, Bodger screwed him too. Just do some retail therapy, you'll be fine, fine, fine. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. You'll be fine. Ho, 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 ho. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. Oh, shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. Shut up and just go shopping. Ho, 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 ho. You'll be fine. Ho, 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 ho. You'll